We often misunderstand the nature of progress. We imagine it as a smooth upward climb, consistent steps leading to a predictable result. But life doesn't work that way. The reality is far less comfortable and far more demanding. Progress is built inside the very struggle we try so hard to avoid. It's forged in the discomfort, in the resistance, in the moments where everything inside you is telling you to quit. If you think about it, nothing of real value has ever been created in comfort. Muscles don't grow by being idle. They grow by being pushed to the edge of their limits, torn down and rebuilt stronger. The same is true of the mind, of character, of the self. When people stop at the first sign of difficulty, what they're really doing is choosing comfort over transformation. They're trading the temporary relief of quitting for the long-term cost of regret. And that trade is devastating, because you don't just lose the opportunity you were chasing, you lose the version of yourself that only would have emerged by enduring the hardship. You forfeit the stronger, wiser, more capable person. You were in the process of becoming. Psychologically, this is one of the great paradoxes of human growth. The very thing we try to escape, pain, struggle, challenge, is the very thing we need to evolve. It's the friction of life that sharpens us. Remove it and we remain dull. Embrace it and we become something more than we were. You can see this everywhere if you're willing to look honestly. Relationships that last are not the ones that never face conflict. They're the ones that survive conflict and in doing so grow deeper. Skills worth having are not acquired without hours of failure. They are born in the grind of repetition and frustration. And a meaningful life isn't constructed from comfort. It is carved out of hardship, resilience, and persistence. Philosophically, this is why the concept of keep going carries so much weight. It's not just about grit or determination in a shallow sense. It's about aligning yourself with the truth of existence itself. Life is structured so that value emerges on the other side of effort. To walk away when things get hard is to deny that structure. It's to live in illusion, but to continue. Despite uncertainty, despite fatigue, despite fear, is to participate fully in reality. It's to acknowledge that growth is inseparable from struggle. Think of the alternative. When you stop, when you give in, you might feel a temporary relief, but underneath it festers something far worse. The quiet knowledge that you abandoned yourself. That knowledge compounds over time. It becomes a heavy presence you carry, an inner voice that whispers, you could have been more if only you had kept going. And that's a voice you don't want to live with because it corrodes your spirit. But if you press on, if you refuse to surrender to that voice, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start to realize that difficulty is not your enemy, it's your teacher. The very things that seemed unbearable at first become the foundation of your resilience. Each small act of persistence strengthens your identity. You begin to see yourself differently, not as someone who runs from challenge, but as someone who faces it head on. That shift in self-perception is life-changing because your identity shapes everything else. If you see yourself as weak, you'll live weakly. If you see yourself as resilient, you'll live with courage. And here's the deeper truth. Progress doesn't just change your external circumstances, it reshapes your internal world. Every time you keep going, you're not just moving closer to your goal. You're reprogramming your mind to believe in its own strength. You're teaching yourself that you can endure, that you can overcome, that you can transform. And the more you reinforce that belief through action, the more powerful it becomes. That's how people build unshakable confidence, not by talking themselves into it, but by proving it through persistence in the trenches of difficulty. So when life places obstacles in front of you, don't interpret them as signs that you're failing. Interpret them as evidence that you're on the path of growth. Struggle is not a detour from progress. It is progress. Each setback, each frustration, each moment of resistance is an invitation to evolve. The question is whether you will accept that invitation or decline it. And this is where the command to keep going matters most. It's not advice, it's survival. Because if you stop every time life gets hard, you will never reach anything worthwhile. You'll drift through existence, always chasing comfort, but never finding fulfillment. The cost of that is unbearable. But if you keep going, if you refuse to let struggle have the final word, then you discover something rare, meaning. Meaning doesn't come from ease, it comes from endurance. So the next time you're tempted to stop, remember this: stopping gives you comfort, but continuing gives you transformation. And transformation is what makes life worth living. Because the truth is simple and it is hard. Progress is built in the struggle, not in the comfort. ****. there's another dimension to wasting time that's often overlooked, and it's perhaps even more destructive than lost hours. It's the gradual erosion of who you are and who you could have been. Because the truth is, time is not just something external that ticks away on the clock. It's the very medium through which your life unfolds. Every hour you waste is not just an hour gone, it's an opportunity for a different version of yourself that will now never exist. Think about that for a moment. If you spend a year drifting without direction, that's not just a lost year. That's a year in which you could have developed a skill, built a relationship, strengthened your body, sharpened your mind, or deepened your character. And once that year is gone, the person you might have become in that time is gone with it. That's the real cost. It's not just about time as a number, it's about the identity you're constructing or failing to construct within that time. Psychologically, this is devastating because we are narrative creatures. Human beings need a sense of forward motion, of growth, of becoming. When we don't have that, when time slips away without us shaping it intentionally, we begin to feel hollow. We lose the sense that our lives are meaningful, and in its place comes something corrosive: regret. Regret is not just sadness, it's a recognition that you betrayed yourself, that you had the potential for more but refused to act on it. And here's the difficult part: that regret compounds. If you waste an afternoon, you can recover. But if you waste a decade, the weight of that lost potential begins to crush you. It changes how you see yourself, and it changes how the world sees you. Because the world has a brutal but honest way of revealing the truth. You either show up as someone who has disciplined themselves, who has sacrificed, who has grown, or you don't. And the opportunities you miss by wasting time are often invisible until it's too late. The job that never came because you didn't develop the skill. The relationship that never blossomed because you didn't have the courage to pursue it. The strength you never built because you kept putting off the work. You see, time wasted doesn't just disappear into the ether. It shapes you negatively. It engraves laziness, avoidance, and fear into your character. And when you look back, you realize that you weren't just passing time. You were training yourself to be weaker, less capable, less alive. That's the tragedy of it. People think inaction is neutral. It isn't. Inaction is action in the direction of decline. This is why the cost of wasting time is so unbearable, because you can never truly calculate it. It isn't just the projects unfinished, the money not earned, the chances not taken. It's the person you could have been, the wiser, stronger, more courageous self that you abandoned. And that is a loss far greater than anything material. But here's where it gets even more interesting and more hopeful. The same principle applies in the opposite direction. Just as wasting time compounds regret, using time well compounds meaning. A single disciplined act, repeated daily, builds into strength. A single hour invested in something meaningful, carried consistently, builds into mastery. And the self that emerges from that kind of discipline is unrecognizable compared to the self that wastes it. This is why people who transform their lives often look back and say, "I don't even know who I was back then." Because they're right, they've become someone else entirely. The choice then is stark and unavoidable. Every moment wasted is not just neutral, it's actively shaping you into someone you don't want to be. And every moment used intentionally is equally shaping you into someone you do want to become. You're never standing still. You're either climbing or sliding, becoming or decaying. That's the brutal truth of existence. And it's why wasting time isn't a small mistake, it's an existential one. If you want to live with dignity, if you want to carry yourself with the kind of strength that commands respect, both from yourself and others, you cannot afford to waste time, because when you waste time, you waste yourself. And once wasted, parts of you may never come back. So the challenge, the call, is simple. Stop pretending that time is abundant. Stop comforting yourself with the illusion that tomorrow will always be available. Start treating time as the most precious currency you have, because that's exactly what it is, the currency of your very being. Spend it carelessly, and you will impoverish your life. Spend it wisely, and you will build something that cannot be taken from you, a life that mattered. And when you look back, years from now, you'll realize that the line between who wasted their life and who lived it fully wasn't talent, wasn't luck, wasn't circumstance. It was simply this: one chose to treat time as sacred, and the other chose to treat it as cheap. The cost of wasting time is unbearable, but the reward of using it well is immeasurable. Choose wisely.